whenever a civil court is filed, a civil action is filed in a court as defined in this section, 610, which is what I read, of this title, or an appeal, including a petition for review of administrative action. Right there is your key words. Because what did I file into the appeals court? I filed for a petition of review. A petition for review was for administrative action. All right. This is what hung them. This is what is the key clincher of why the other court transferred it over. Because we were addressing, remember, I am the plaintiff in this thing. I am going after an administrative issue. I'm not coming in after criminal. I'm not coming in in the district court just to come in. I brought an administrative issue. And this is why the court, and it says, including a petition for review of administrative actions. So for you to try to go back out and maybe just use this Title 28, 1631, transfer to Tier 1 of jurisdiction, if you're not dealing with an administrative issue here, they could sit down and play with you on this. Because whenever a civil action is filed into a court as defined in this section 610, and it told you what the courts were, you got to make sure that you're in the right court, which falls under this section of this title, or for an appeal, including a petition for review of an administrative action. Be careful of what you're getting into. Be very careful of what you're getting into. Understand what they're doing. Because I was already filed into the proper court, the Federal Circuit Court had no choice but to transfer it over to the venue that I was already sitting in, because we were dealing with an administrative issue. We're dealing with administrative misconduct. This is what's taken so long on my case, is because we are going after the administrative side of this thing. We are coming back in and showing misconduct. It takes time to prove our case because they are so used to doing a 12B to get out from underneath, and we're so used to throwing our hands up, or they're so used to putting in that this is scandalous, or this is not in good taste, or this is not well taken, and we throw our hands up. I've learned when I get this stuff how to come back in and address these people on this. If it's not well taken, then you show me where anything in my paperwork is misleading, misrepresenting, and you show me where the laws that I have used to address this issue is improper or incorrect, and they can't. What we are learning is these people are not used to dealing with administrative issues on them, and they're not used to having someone come back in and play with it on them. That is the number one issue. They are not used to having someone come in, show the errors, show the procedures, show the violations. It's like what we're addressing here with what the judge here in North Carolina asked. I got a very, very polite letter off the gentleman. I'm really impressed with this man for what he wrote me. What I have here is this. I have received your material in proposed decision. Unfortunately, due to the press of some other matters, I have not yet been able to come to a final decision in reviewing your material and petition and the records. I have yet to find a full statement of the underlying facts and circumstances which promoted your petition in the first place. I am aware that you received a traffic citation, went to court, and if I remember correctly, the case was dismissed. There was also the matter of the type of license plate for your private vehicle. I would very much appreciate it if you would send me an affidavit no need to cite the laws and statutes, as you have already done that, in which you simply tell me what actually happened to you, which generated the ticket and the present controversy. As they used to say on Dragnet, just the facts, just the facts. It does not have to be more than a page or so.
Well, he's going to get a little bit more than the page.
Yeah, he's going to get about 5 pages. But half of it is my stuff, and the other half is the issue of what has created the problem.
Right.
This will give me a better understanding of your legal argument. Again, I am sorry that it has taken this long. Please be sure to send a copy of the affidavit to Mr. Hart, who represents the state, as this is required under the rules of procedure.
Ooh, procedure?
I hope you're having a pleasant summer. Fine.
Rod, I wonder if these judges would like it if we all sent them little letters telling them, I'm sorry that I wasn't able to respond within the time allowed, but I hope you're having a pleasant summer.
Well, I understand. But the thing of it is, if you go back and review the filing that we put in that following week, which generated this letter, it generated a quick response, quicker than I assumed, as I gave him 10 days to respond before I filed a federal lawsuit against him.
Well, it's curious that he responded before your filing that brought this letter on. It's funny that the letter was written before your filing was actually technically clocked in.
Well, it is, because the thing of it is, I sent one to him personally as I sent it to the clerk of courts.
Yeah.
But see, ladies and gentlemen, this is what I'm saying. He sent me a letter, okay? So now we're coming back in, we're responding. Now, what we're coming back in and explaining to him is prior to my ticket, back in July, around the 14th, I sent a private contract into the Department of Transportation addressing the driver's license issue and separating myself from their United States, standing in the light side of this thing. I sent them a contract. I sent them a proposal. I sent them in my license plate, the title removing it. They held onto that contract. They held onto that plate until it expired, knowing that they was going to put me in a bind of not having the usage of my truck. They're going to teach me a lesson. Well, I got a letter back from the Attorney General telling me that I had to follow federal regulations because that's the law, and I had to follow North Carolina statutes because that's the law, and if I don't, I will go to jail.
Now, it's unfortunate that they didn't even read those two things that they just said for you to follow.
That's exactly right. So what's come out of it is the fact that I did come in honor with them to change a contract, to make a new contract with them. They refused to contract, kept my tag until it expired to put me in a bind. At which point I took the tag off of my Jeep in order to get my truck over for an inspection. I got it inspected. I come back in. I got picked up by Dallas Police Department. The first comment is, "You're driving on an expired tag." I says, "No, sir. Sure am not. Here's the new tag for the truck." He says, "Oh, you're driving on a fictitious tag." I said, "Nope, ain't fictitious." He said, "Well, that's registered to your Jeep." I said, "And who's the Jeep registered to?" "Well, it's registered to Rodney Dale Klaus." I said, "That's exactly right. That's me. That's my tag, my Jeep, my truck, my tag. That ain't fictitious. It's mine." That's what created the controversy. But the point being is, I sit here and file paperwork into the state to try to resolve this issue like Ronnie did, and so many of you other people have tried to file into DOT. We're trying to come back in and address an issue here. They forced the issue under federal laws, under federal regulations on driver's license. I accepted the challenge. So we went back in and we started laying the laws out. Okay, these are your guidelines. Thank you very much. I will sit down and I will appreciate everything that you put in. I will sit down and I will address this issue with you, and I will come back in, and that's exactly what I did. I did nothing but hammer them on their own statutes, their own rules, and their own regulations.
Yeah, because, see, if they had read their own federal statutes and North Carolina statutes, they would have seen, oh, wait a minute, he's right. It only applies to commercial, applications.
And this is what we're coming back in and addressing. So the judge is asking for a 2-pager, and technically he's getting 5, but because it's separated quite a bit out because of the spacing in this thing, when he reads this, we're coming back in and we're addressing the fact that down here, it's like I sit down and said, now the other 2 issues, my damages and the issue of the state abuse, the Highway Safety Fund. All right, I put in this Tampa case for $1.8 million a day. I told him what I want on this thing, and I'm being considerate here, but I'm giving him an option. But what we're doing is, number one, we addressed a couple different things in this thing on him. One, we addressed the bankruptcy clause, which was very, very important, that needs to be addressed in this thing. Because we need to let them know that we have a good understanding of the bankruptcy. Because once we let them know that we have a good understanding of the bankruptcy, then they're going to have an understanding that we know a little more than what we should know. Because part of what I'm saying here is this.
Rod, on what you just hit right there, when I watched that part 2 of those videos, it addresses that bankruptcy and in paying off the national debt, not by them. They're using fines and fees to pay off the national debt. So what they're using is us coming through the courts and the fines and the tickets. That is how they're generating the revenue to pay all that off. Exactly what you just said right there.
Because what I did here is I addressed the issue that if the state of North Carolina wants to make an issue of the 1933 Banking Act under Public Law 1, 48 Stat C1, and Public Law 73-10, 40 Stat 411, and Public Law 10, Chapter 48, 48 Stat 112, where they want to claim ownership of my vehicle and my property because it is state property under the bankruptcy of 1933, then I'm saying, then fine. Then pay the bills then pay the bills for it, and pay me the wage for driving a state-owned vehicle and upkeep on all property. By the way, I do understand the 1933 Banking Act and state of emergency issue. I do understand this. That's why we're addressing it. Now, we're gonna get into the Highway Safety Act issue here. I am now addressing him. Now let's talk the Highway Safety Act funding for abuse. Every car, truck, semi-truck, motorcycle on the road that gets stopped generates a ticket and a controversy in the federal funding of the capital state of North Carolina, and not the state, with lowercase. 40% of this federal funding was to come to my town and other towns. This is to help the schools, the fire department, and just the community. The state has placed it in a CAFRA account. The court has placed court cases on Chris in order to collect off the stock market. Over 80% of the stops are people like me who are not required to meet the federal or state guidelines for a license for a CDL or a commercial motor vehicle. In the laws that I have placed before you, it takes the Secretary of Transportation to pull a driver's license. Second, it takes a trained DOT officer to file a complaint.